Hollows. The faceless big bad of Zenless Zone Zero and the existential crisis that everyone deals with in one way or another. Scientists aim to increase ether aptitudes, cultists fuse themselves with ethereals, and the military fights with everything they've got. And with New Eridu standing as the last bastion of humanity, all three of these methods of dealing with the Hollows have come into play. But only one has had major success. Good old brute force. And that is the very purpose of the Void Hunters. In the last video, we went over the history of Silver Squad and their ambitious experiment to potentially mass produce Void Hunters, alongside Lady Sunbringer's potential connection to the cloning process. But since we are on the subject of Void Hunters, and as the new one has just made her debut, what better time is there to look into the history of the first 7? The Void Hunters that started it all and paved the way for our current generation. So without further ado, this is the first generation Void Hunters explained. Okay, so there is no real order to follow here because we have no clue how to compare them in strength, so let's just go in the order of how they were presented to us, shall we? So let's begin with our unnamed swordmaster of the Hoshimi clan. And we are starting off with a good one here because based off of the first glance, we can't really glean much from what is shown, but judging by what we know, and I will be taking a few creative liberties here due to the lack of info, this is not tailless that she is wielding. We'll get into that later, because this weapon is way longer than tailless. Tailless is a katana, but this blade seems to resemble more of a nodachi than a katana, judging by how noticeably long the handle is, of course. Which is a testament to how strong this woman is, because this weapon can easily be longer than the wielder is tall, and can even be difficult to unsheathe. So using this in combat versus ethereals denotes much more of a heavier hitting style than Miyabi's speed-focused hit-and-run style. And when mastered, this choice of weaponry does have its advantages, because in history this weapon was used to counter cavalry, so needless to say, our Hoshimi Swordmaster was going for the big targets. And this is even further corroborated by the massive hulking monstrous ethereals that we see her facing off against. But even though she is shown with this nodachi, that does not mean that she was not a wielder of tailless, because the Hoshimi family has been in possession of this cursed blade since the very first clan head. And when this blade spoke to Miyabi, it called her the second most arrogant person it has ever met. And I guess we are looking at the first most arrogant person here. Why? Because Miyabi's sheath was made especially for her to wield this weapon. Such protective measures did not exist when our Swordmaster was active, meaning that she endured the ill effects every time she wielded it. So odds are she worked alone due to the homicidal rampage Tailless probably put her through every time she picked up the weapon. Which may be why she doesn't have it here. Odds are she used it as a last resort instead of as a main means of fighting. And as far as we know, she never fell in combat because she is said to have lived to teach future generations of warriors. So odds are, of all the Void Hunters, she's quite possibly still alive. And that is just about all I can squeeze out from this little lore tidbit. So let's move on to our second legendary hero of New Eridu, none other than Lady Sunbringer. And I just know we're going to be seeing more of her in the future because she's got the Kiana eyes, the white hair, she has plot importance written all over her. But what we know about her is rather simple. She destroyed the Hive Lord Hollow in the sky and created Bangbu. And according to what makes a person a Void Hunter, the person has to perform a great feat either protecting the city by suppressing or repelling dangerous hollows, or by creating or inventing revolutionary new technologies. And Sunbringer did both. So that makes her a very special Void Hunter. A double Void Hunter, if you will, earning the title in 2 respects. And I don't know how terrifying an airborne hollow is, but I'm glad she took care of it, because I can only imagine that it was probably blocking the sun being up so high, and her destroying it brought back the sun, making her the Sunbringer, with probably no relation to the Exaltist Bringer. So I guess the sun was destined to rise, right? But Star Rail references aside, this is an incredible feat in its own right, because we already saw how much of an extreme feat it was for Miyabi to destroy the Argos Hollow. So destroying the Hollow in the sky, that's something absolutely insane. So Sunbringer is just as strong in brains as she is in brawn. But unfortunately, she is depicted holding a flag with the Marcel Group logo on it, so we have no idea what weapon she wielded. But if I had to guess, dual pistols. just a hunch. And speaking of white-haired legends, here's where we gotta talk about Joyous, who our proxy siblings will probably have a lot to do with in the future, especially since he was the predecessor of all proxies and holo investigators. He was the one to successfully navigate the Papago Hollow, aka the Divine Maze, and he was the one to create the first ever carrot. And though he was technically alone and did this entirely by himself, he was accompanied by a prototype Bang Boo. So we know that Lady Sunbringer was in on this achievement. Nice to know that the Void Hunters worked together back then, just as they do now. But going back to the Divine Maze, I want to make it clear that this hollow is the Outer Ring Hollow's parent. Yes, this hollow that we go into, the Outer Ring, is a companion hollow, which is smaller and thereby easier to navigate. But the Papago Hollow is known as one of the 6 great hollows. So yeah, Joyous chose hard mode and won. Curiously, nothing is said about Joyous's combat abilities, though judging by how he looks, there is no way this guy was helpless in a fight. He has an eye scar. I mean, look at those things strapped to his chest. I don't know what they are, but they look dangerous. Maybe arrowheads or blades of some sort. Leave a comment if you know what those things are, I'd love to know. Also, since he went into a great hollow by himself and made it out, no way that guy was weak. So moving on to the second to last entry, we've got what appears to be a 3-man team to address here. Vike, Dan, and the unnamed leader of the mercenary group, who I'm going to call Peach for obvious reasons. Now, their crowning achievement is rather unique compared to the others, because they are said to have pushed the Dark Wall back 37 kilometers. So I guess you are wondering, what is the Dark Wall? Well, remember when I said that New Eridu is the last remaining city on Earth? Well, the Dark Wall is everything else. Yes, odds are the Earth looks something like this right now. We are in that dire of straits. I guess it is possible that there are other small patches of land like New Eridu in the world that are stubbornly clinging to life, but as of right now, this is all that we know exists. And these mercenaries push back this wall of death 37 kilometers back, which is possibly in all directions, meaning that they created a lot more livable land for literally everyone else alive on the planet. And that is quite possibly the most impressive achievement out of all of the Void Hunters. And I can't even imagine how they managed to do that or how much damage they did in key places, but it is a major shining light of hope that shows that humanity isn't quite done yet. However, there seems to be a dark side to this group, because what if I told you that we saw one of these 3 in the most recent story? And if I'm getting my silhouettes right, this massive hulking shadow holding a giant sword who left Sarah to die is none other than Dan. Ribbon coming from the sword handle, giant blade with sharp details on the top, no visible head, so the wielder is striking the exact same pose. Yeah, that's our man. And he left Sarah to die, so he may have been in on the whole erasure of her squad, which is quite possible since he is a mercenary and works for whoever pays him. So it looks like we've got something strange going on here. Some morally gray Void Hunter thing going on here. But other than that, we only have one more Void Hunter left to address who could possibly be still in a hollow now, Professor Arky, the founder of Helios Academy, and someone our proxy siblings will probably meet at some point or another. And even though nothing is said about his combat capabilities, his body is literally fire. This guy is a threat. And if Helios Academy is known for one thing, it's human body experimentation and modification. And even though combat is not what he's known for, his crowning achievement is finding the common characteristics within the hollows, which probably aided Joyous greatly in his hollow navigation technology. Technology that Arky probably needs now, considering he's been missing for an entire era. Apparently he went into Hollow Zero, the biggest of all known hollows, looking for the truth like the mad scientist he is, and never came back. But I've got a sneaking suspicion he's still out there. I don't think a man whose body is a blazing inferno has the capability of being corrupted by hollows. These Helios Academy people are definitely going to have a huge impact on the plot later, but unfortunately that is all we know about the Purple Fire Headman. And thus concludes our breakdown of all 7 of the first Void Hunters. Because this is the first generation Void Hunters explained. I really want to go into hardcore theorizing about this game, but before we go too far forward, we gotta look back and get a proper framework of ideas of how this world works. Next time I talk about this game, it will probably be a huge breakdown of how Ether and Hollows work, so I've got some research to do. But with all this Void Hunter hype going around with Xiao Guang at the head of it, I can't help but talk about the stars of the show first. Void Hunters have got to be the most interesting group in the lore right now, and for me, every time one is on screen, I just know something cool is about to happen. What can I say? I am a sucker for hype moments and aura farming, so you know that I'ma be all over that. But what do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace, y'all.